The blood on her hands had long since dried by the time Willow Crane stumbled over the rocky terrain, her shepherd dog Winston whimpering softly against her chest, despite weighing nearly 70 pounds. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on this September afternoon in 1883, and her arms screamed in protest with every step she took across the unforgiving landscape between her family's ranch and San Angelo. She had already walked 5 miles with Winston cradled against her body, his hind leg mangled from the rattlesnake bite and subsequent fall into a ravine, and she refused to leave him to die alone on the prairie. Her father had told her it was foolish to risk herself for a dog, but Winston had been her constant companion since she was 18. And now, at 23, she could not imagine abandoning him when he needed her most. The dirt road stretched endlessly before her, shimmering in the heat, and Willow's legs trembled with exhaustion. Her cotton dress clung to her body, soaked through with sweat, and her dark hair had fallen loose from its pins hours ago. Winston's breathing had grown shallow, and she whispered prayers between her cracked lips as she forced herself forward, one agonizing step after another. The town doctor was her only hope, though she knew most physicians refused to treat animals. Still, Doc Henderson was a kind man, and she prayed he might at least tell her what to do, how to save the creature that had guarded her family's land and slept at the foot of her bed for 5 years. The sound of hoofbeats made her lift her head, squinting against the glare. A rider approached from the direction of town, moving at an easy canter. Willow's heart hammered in her chest as she considered stepping aside to let him pass, but her legs chose that moment to betray her completely. She sank to her knees in the middle of the road, clutching Winston close as black spots danced across her vision. The rider pulled up short, his horse snorting as he dismounted in one fluid motion. Willow blinked up at him, trying to focus on his face. He was tall and lean, probably in his mid-20s, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his wide-brimmed hat. His eyes, a striking hazel that seemed to shift between green and gold in the sunlight, widened with concern as he took in her condition. "Madam, are you hurt?" His voice was deep and rough, touched with the accent of someone who had spent his life in Texas. "Not me," Willow managed, her throat so dry the words barely came out. "My dog. Snake bit him this morning and he fell. I have to get him to town." The cowboy crouched down beside her, his gaze moving to Winston's injured leg. The dog's breathing was labored, his eyes half closed. "That's a long way to carry a dog this size. How far have you come?" 5 miles, maybe more. I left before dawn." Something flickered in the cowboy's expression, a mixture of admiration and disbelief. He removed his hat, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "I am Zachary Irving. I work at the Double B Ranch just outside San Angelo. Let me help you." Before Willow could protest, he was shrugging out of his leather vest and spreading it on the ground. "Set him down here for a moment. You need water." He moved to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding, and returned with a canteen. Willow drank gratefully, the water like salvation sliding down her parched throat. "I am Willow Crane. My family has a ranch north of here, the Lazy Sea. Thank you for stopping." Zachary knelt beside Winston, his hands gentle as he examined the injured leg. "The swelling is bad, but he is still fighting. That counts for something." He looked up at Willow, his hazel eyes intense. "There is a veterinarian in San Angelo, name of Harrison. He set up practice about 6 months ago. I will take you there, but we need to move fast." Relief flooded through Willow so powerfully she felt tears spring to her eyes. "I cannot ask you to do that. You must have business in town." "Nothing that cannot wait." Zachary stood and scooped Winston up with surprising ease, cradling the injured dog as carefully as Willow had. "Can you ride?" "Yes, but—" "Then mount up. We will make better time together than you would on foot, even carrying him yourself." Willow's legs shook as she stood, and Zachary steadied her with his free hand. His touch was warm and solid, and she found herself leaning into it for just a moment before catching herself. She moved to the horse, which stood patiently as she pulled herself into the saddle. Every muscle in her body protested, stiff from hours of carrying Winston's weight. Zachary handed the dog up to her, and Willow settled Winston across her lap. Then Zachary swung up behind her, his arms coming around on either side as he gathered the reins. Willow's breath caught at the sudden closeness, the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "Hold on to him tight," Zachary said, his voice close to her ear. "We are going to move quickly." He urged the horse into a steady lope, not so fast as to jostle them dangerously, but quick enough to eat up the miles. Willow clung to Winston with one hand and gripped the saddle horn with the other, acutely aware of every point where her body pressed against Zachary's. She could feel the strength in his arms as he controlled the horse, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the way he adjusted his seat to make the ride smoother for her and her injured dog. "How did it happen?" Zachary asked after they had covered a mile or so. Willow swallowed hard, the memory still fresh and terrifying. "We were checking the fence line on the eastern pasture. Winston went ahead of me the way he always does, and I heard him yelp. By the time I got there, the snake was already gone, but I saw the bite marks on his leg. He tried to jump away and went over the edge of the ravine. It is not deep, maybe 15 feet, but he landed wrong. I climbed down and carried him back up, but he cannot use that leg at all now. You climbed down into a ravine and carried a 70-pound dog back up by yourself." "I could not leave him there." Zachary was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice held a note of something Willow could not quite identify. "Most folks would have put him down rather than risk themselves like that." "He is not just a dog," Willow said fiercely. "He is family. He has protected our ranch, alerted us to predators, helped round up cattle when they strayed. He deserves a chance to live, just like any of us would want if we were hurt and helpless." "I understand," Zachary said, and somehow Willow believed he truly did. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the landscape rolling past. The land here was a patchwork of scrubby mesquite, prickly pear cactus, and dried grass, broken occasionally by rocky outcroppings. In the distance, Willow could see the Concho River glinting in the sunlight, and beyond that, the buildings of San Angelo rising from the prairie. "Have you worked at the Double B long?" Willow asked, partly to distract herself from Winston's labored breathing and partly because she found herself genuinely curious about this man who had stopped to help a stranger. "About 3 years now. I came to Texas from Missouri after my parents passed. Cattle work was all I knew, and the Double B was hiring. The foreman, Dutch masters, gave me a chance even though I was green as grass when it came to the type of ranching they do here. It is different from what I knew up north." "What made you choose San Angelo?" "Honestly, I stuck a pin in a map." Zachary's chest rumbled with a soft laugh. "I needed to get away from the memories, start fresh somewhere new. Texas seemed as far from Missouri as I could get while still staying in country I understood. I have never regretted it, though. This land gets in your blood." Willow nodded, understanding that sentiment completely. Despite the harshness of the Texas climate, the constant struggle against drought and predators and market prices that seemed designed to bankrupt small ranchers, she could not imagine living anywhere else. The wide open spaces, the endless sky, the stark beauty of the landscape, All of it felt like home in a way that ran bone deep. "My father feels the same way," she said. "He came here after the war, said he needed land where a man could breathe freely. He built the lazy sea from nothing, just him and my mother, and a dream of making something that would last. They worked themselves nearly to death those first years, but they made it happen." "Brothers or sisters?" Zachary asked. "I had a younger brother, but he died of fever 3 years ago. He was only 16. The old grief still had the power to tighten her throat. "After that, it has been just me helping my father. My mother passed when I was 14. I am sorry. That is a heavy burden for one family to bear. We manage. The ranch is not huge, but it is ours, free and clear. We run about 200 head of cattle and breed horses on the side. Winston, he has been invaluable for keeping everything together." She stroked the dog's head, feeling the heat radiating from his body, fever from the infection setting in. They needed to reach the veterinarian soon. As if sensing her worry, Zachary urged the horse to move a bit faster. San Angelo was clearly visible now, its buildings taking shape as they drew closer. Willow could see the courthouse tower rising above the other structures, the various storefronts lining the main street, the sprawl of houses extending outward from the commercial district. "The veterinarian's office is on the north end of town," Zachary said. "Harrison is a good man, trained back east before he came out here. If anyone can help your dog, he can. I hope you are right. I do not have much money with me, but I can pay him once he sets the terms. Do not worry about that right now. Let's just get Winston looked at." They entered the outskirts of San Angelo, passing houses and businesses as they made their way up the main street. People turned to stare at the sight of a disheveled woman covered in dust and dried blood, cradling a large dog while a cowboy guided the horse with his arms around her. Willow felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she held her head high. She had nothing to be ashamed of. She was trying to save a life, and if people wanted to gossip about it, that was their concern, not hers. Zachary guided the horse to a small building with a wooden sign that read, "Daniel Harrison, veterinary surgeon." He dismounted first, then reached up to take Winston from Willow's arms before helping her down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and Zachary steadied her again with one hand while balancing Winston with the other. "Can you walk?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "Yes, I just need a moment." Willow forced her protesting muscles to cooperate, and together they made their way to the door. Zachary used his boot to knock since his hands were full. The door opened to reveal a man in his 40s with graying hair and intelligent blue eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He took one look at Winston and stepped back. "Bring him in, quickly. Set him on the examination table." The interior of the office was clean and well organized, smelling of carbolic acid and various medicinal compounds. Zachary laid Winston gently on the table indicated, and the dog whimpered softly. Dr. Harrison moved immediately to examine him, his hands skilled and efficient as he checked the injured leg and the snake bite. "How long ago was he bitten?" Harrison asked without looking up. "This morning around dawn," Willow said. "I do not know exactly what time, maybe 6 o'clock or a bit after. And he fell immediately after. Within moments, yes. He was trying to get away from the snake." Harrison nodded, continuing his examination. "The good news is that he is still alive, which means either the snake did not inject a full load of venom or your dog has a strong constitution. Probably both. The bad news is that this leg is badly broken in at least 2 places, and there is significant infection setting in from the venom. I am going to have to set the bones and clean out the wound. It will be painful for him, and there are no guarantees he will regain full use of the leg even if he survives." Willow felt tears threatening again, but she blinked them back. What are his chances if we treat him now? Maybe 60% he pulls through. If you had waited another few hours, I would have told you to put him down. You got him here just in time. Harrison finally looked up at her, and his expression softened slightly. You carried him here yourself for the first 5 miles. Then Mr. Irving helped me bring him the rest of the way. Something shifted in Harrison's expression, a kind of respect. That is dedication. All right, let me prepare what I need. This is going to take several hours, and I have to warn you, it is not going to be pleasant to watch. You are welcome to stay, but you might want to wait outside. I am staying, Willow said firmly. Zachary touched her arm gently. I will stay too if you do not mind the company. Willow looked at him, this stranger who had already done so much for her, and felt something warm unfold in her chest. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Harrison set to work, and Willow learned that the veterinarian had not been exaggerating about the difficulty of the procedure. He administered laudanum to Winston to dull the pain, though the dog still whined and struggled as Harrison cleaned out the infected wound, removing dead tissue and flushing it with carbolic solution. Setting the broken bones took even longer, with Harrison manipulating the leg carefully while Willow held Winston's head, and Zachary helped keep the dog as still as possible. Through it all, Zachary remained calm and steady, his presence a source of comfort Willow had not known she needed. He spoke in low, soothing tones to Winston, his hands gentle but firm when the dog tried to thrash. Willow found herself watching him as much as she watched the veterinarian work, noting the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the careful way he handled the suffering animal, the genuine concern in his eyes. By the time Harrison finished splinting the leg and bandaging the wound, the sun was beginning to set outside, casting long shadows through the windows. Winston lay on the table, breathing more easily now that the laudanum had fully taken effect, though he was far from out of danger. He needs to stay here for at least a few days, Harrison said, washing his hands in a basin. I need to monitor him for infection and make sure the splint holds. After that, if he is improving, you can take him home, but he will need at least 6 weeks of restricted movement for the bones to heal properly. No running, no rough play, nothing that could jar that leg. I understand. I will make sure he rests. Willow reached out to stroke Winston's head, relief flooding through her that he had at least survived the surgery. As for payment, Harrison continued, the surgery and medications will be $15, plus $2 per day for boarding while he is here. I know that is steep, but I will pay it, Willow said quickly. She had $7 in her pocket, money she had been intending to use for supplies in town, but she would figure out the rest somehow. I have $7 with me now. I can bring the rest in 2 days when I come back to check on him. Harrison nodded. That will be fine. I trust you are good for it. She is, Zachary said. And if there is any problem, I will cover what she cannot. Willow turned to him, startled. Zachary, I cannot ask you to do that. You have already done so much. You are not asking, I am offering. His hazel eyes met hers, and Willow felt her breath catch again. There was something in his gaze, a warmth and sincerity that made her feel seen in a way she had not experienced before. Thank you, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Harrison cleared his throat politely. Well, now that is settled, I suggest you two get something to eat and find places to rest for the night. Miss Crane, you look about ready to collapse, if you do not mind my saying so. Willow realized with a start that she was indeed swaying on her feet, exhaustion crashing over her now that the immediate crisis had passed. I should send word to my father. He will be worried sick by now. The telegraph office is still open, Zachary said. I will walk you there, and then we can get you a room at the boarding house. Mrs. Fletcher runs a respectable establishment, and she will have something available." They left Winston in Harrison's capable care, and Willow found herself leaning heavily on Zachary's arm as they walked the short distance to the telegraph office. The proprietor, a thin man with a prominent Adam's apple, took down her message to her father explaining what had happened and assuring him she was safe in town. The return message came through within 20 minutes, her father's relief evident even in the terse wording. "Thank God you are safe. Stay in town as long as needed. Wire if you need money. We'll send Tom to fetch you when ready." With that settled, Zachary guided her to a 2-story house painted white with green shutters. Mrs. Fletcher turned out to be a plump woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She took one look at Willow and immediately showed her to a room on the 2nd floor, promising hot water for a bath and a meal sent up. "You look like you have been through the mill, dear," Mrs. Fletcher said sympathetically. "Get yourself cleaned up and rested. Everything else can wait until tomorrow." Willow thanked her and turned to Zachary, who stood in the hallway looking uncertain for the first time since she had met him. "I do not know how to thank you properly," she said. "You saved Winston's life and probably mine as well. If you had not come along when you did." "I am glad I was there," Zachary said simply. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of her tangled hair behind her ear, the gesture so tender it made Willow's heart skip. "Get some rest. I will check on you in the morning if that is all right." "I would like that very much." "Then I will see you tomorrow, Willow Crane." He tipped his hat to her and headed down the stairs, and Willow stood in the hallway for a long moment, her hand pressed against her cheek where his fingers had brushed her skin. She barely knew this man, had only met him hours ago, yet she already felt drawn to him in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. The hot bath Mrs. Fletcher provided was heaven, though the water turned brown within minutes from all the dust and dried blood Willow washed away. She scrubbed her skin until it was pink and clean, then washed her hair twice to remove all the grit and sweat. By the time she emerged and dressed in her chemise, since her dress was too filthy to put back on, she felt almost human again. Mrs. Fletcher brought up a tray with beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie, along with a pitcher of cold milk. Willow ate ravenously, not realizing how hungry she had been until food was in front of her. She cleaned every dish, then climbed into the bed and was asleep within seconds of her head hitting the pillow. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of birds singing outside. For a moment she was disoriented, not recognizing her surroundings, but then the events of the previous day came flooding back. Winston, the long walk, Zachary. Willow sat up, wincing at the soreness in her muscles. Every part of her body ached, but it was a manageable pain, the kind that would fade in a day or two. Her dress had been cleaned and was hanging on a hook by the door, still slightly damp but wearable. She dressed quickly, braided her hair, and headed downstairs. Mrs. Fletcher was in the dining room setting out breakfast for her boarders. "Good morning, dear. You slept nearly 12 hours. I hope you are feeling better." "Much better, thank you." "Has Mr. Irving come by yet?" "Not yet, but the day is young. Sit down and have some breakfast. You need to rebuild your strength." Willow was working her way through a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits when she heard the knock at the front door. Her heart jumped, and she looked up to see Mrs. Fletcher showing Zachary into the dining room. He had cleaned up as well, his hair still damp and curling slightly, his face freshly shaved. He wore clean clothes and carried his hat in his hands. "Good morning," he said, his eyes finding hers immediately. "I hope I am not intruding." "Not at all," Willow said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "Please join me." Zachary sat down, and Mrs. Fletcher brought him a plate without being asked. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Zachary spoke. "I stopped by the veterinarian's office on my way here. Winston made it through the night, and Harrison says he is showing signs of improvement. The fever is down slightly." Relief washed over Willow. "Thank God. I was so worried. Harrison said you could visit this morning if you wanted. He thinks it would be good for Winston to see a familiar face." "I would like that very much." Willow set down her fork, studying Zachary's face. "Did you sleep well?" "Well enough. The bunkhouse at the Double B is not exactly luxurious, but I am used to it." He paused, then added, "I kept thinking about you, though. Wondering if you were all right, if you needed anything." The admission made Willow's cheeks warm. "That is kind of you. I slept like the dead, honestly. I do not think I moved once all night." After breakfast, they walked together to Harrison's office. The veterinarian greeted them with a tired smile, clearly having spent much of the night monitoring his patient. Winston was awake, lying on a pile of blankets in a large pen. His tail thumped weakly when he saw Willow, and she knelt beside him, running her hands over his head and ears. "Hello, boy," she murmured. "You gave me such a scare, but you are going to be all right now, you hear me? You are going to heal up and come home." Winston licked her hand, and Willow felt tears spill over. They were tears of relief this time, not fear or grief. Harrison watched the reunion with a satisfied expression. "He is not out of the woods yet," the veterinarian cautioned, "but his odds keep improving with every hour that passes. The fact that he is alert and responsive is a very good sign. Keep talking to him, Miss Crane. I believe animals understand more than we give them credit for." Willow spent an hour with Winston, talking to him about the ranch, about the chickens that needed feeding, about how much she missed him already. Zachary sat nearby, not intruding but providing a quiet presence that Willow found comforting. When she finally stood to leave, promising Winston she would return the next day, she felt lighter than she had since the whole ordeal began. "What will you do now?" Zachary asked as they stepped out into the morning sunshine. "I suppose I should buy some supplies as long as I am in town, though I do not have much money left after paying Harrison. And I need to send another telegram to my father, let him know Winston is improving. May I accompany you?" "I do not have to be back at the ranch until this evening." Willow looked at him, this man who had ridden into her life at exactly the moment she needed help, and made a decision. "I would like that. And Zachary, I would like to know you better. You saved Winston, but more than that, you have been incredibly kind. That means a great deal to me." Something shifted in Zachary's expression, his hazel eyes warming. "I would like to know you better too, Willow. I have to admit, you have been on my mind since yesterday. I have met a lot of people in my time here, but no one quite like you. The way you fought for your dog, the determination in your eyes, the strength you showed. It moved something in me." They walked slowly through San Angelo, and Willow found herself telling Zachary about her life on the ranch, about her dreams and fears, about the loneliness that sometimes crept over her in the evenings when the work was done, and she had nothing to do but think about the family members she had lost. Zachary listened intently, asking questions that showed he was truly interested, not just being polite. In turn, he told her about his childhood in Missouri, about losing his parents within 6 months of each other to illnesses, about the desperate need to escape the memories that haunted every corner of the place he had grown up. He spoke about his work at the Double B, about the satisfaction he found in hard physical labor, about the camaraderie with the other ranch hands, but also the underlying loneliness of a life that was all work and no real connection. "I never really had time for courting," Zachary admitted as they sat on a bench outside the general store, packages beside them. "Between working to keep food on the table when my parents were sick and then coming here and trying to prove myself. There has never been room for much else. Dutch keeps saying I am going to turn into a dried-up old bachelor if I do not make an effort, but I never met anyone who made me want to try. Until now. Willow's heart hammered in her chest. Until now. Zachary turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Yesterday, when I saw you kneeling in that road with your dog, covered in dust and blood but still determined to save him, something clicked into place. I looked at you and thought, there is a woman worth knowing, and everything since then has only confirmed that first impression. You are strong and brave and compassionate, and I would very much like the chance to court you properly, if you would be amenable to that. Willow felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into something unknown and potentially dangerous. But she also felt more alive than she had in years. I think I would like that very much. But you should know, my life is not easy. The ranch takes all my time and energy. I do not have pretty dresses or the leisure for long afternoon socials. Most days I am up before dawn and do not stop working until after dark. I know what ranch life is like, Willow. I live it every day myself. That does not scare me. What matters to me is the person, not the circumstances. He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm around hers. I am not looking for someone to dress up and show off. I am looking for a partner, someone who understands the value of hard work and commitment, someone real. Then yes, Willow said, her voice steady despite the wild beating of her heart. I would like you to court me, Zachary Irving. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his entire face, and Willow felt herself falling just a little bit in love right there on that bench in the middle of San Angelo. They spent the rest of the day together, and Willow was amazed by how easy it felt, how comfortable she was in Zachary's presence. There was no awkwardness, no struggling to think of things to say. Conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by comfortable silences that felt companionable rather than strained. They visited Winston again in the afternoon, and Zachary's gentle way with the injured dog only increased Willow's growing affection for him. As evening approached, Zachary walked her back to the boarding house. I have to head back to the Double B tonight, he said reluctantly. We are moving cattle to the south pasture tomorrow, and Dutch needs all hands available, but I would like to come back on Sunday if that suits you. We could have dinner together and visit Winston again. Sunday would be wonderful, Willow agreed. I will stay in town until Harrison releases Winston, so I will be here. Then I will see you Sunday. Zachary lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned and courtly, and it made Willow's skin tingle. Take care of yourself, Willow Crane, and know that I will be counting the hours until I see you again. He mounted his horse and rode out of town, turning once to wave before disappearing around a bend in the road. Willow stood on the porch of the boarding house, her hand pressed to her lips, wondering how her life had changed so completely in the span of 2 days. The following days fell into a pleasant routine. Willow visited Winston every morning and afternoon, and each time she saw improvement in his condition. The fever broke completely on the 3rd day, and Harrison declared himself cautiously optimistic about the dog's full recovery. Willow sent regular telegrams to her father, keeping him updated and assuring him that everything was under control. She spent her evenings on the porch of the boarding house, often in the company of Mrs. Fletcher and some of the other boarders. The town had a different rhythm than the ranch, and Willow found herself enjoying the change of pace, the chance to interact with people beyond her father, and the occasional ranch hand they hired for seasonal work. But mostly, she thought about Zachary. She replayed their conversations in her mind, remembered the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, the gentle strength of his hands. She found herself looking forward to Sunday with an eagerness that both delighted and slightly frightened her. She had been courted before, briefly, by a banker's son from San Angelo, who had decided ranch life was too rough for his refined sensibilities. That had stung, but she realized now that she had never felt for him a fraction of what she was already feeling for Zachary. Sunday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect autumn weather. Willow wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and took extra care with her hair, pinning it up in a style that was prettier than her usual practical braid. Mrs. Fletcher noticed and smiled knowingly, but said nothing. Zachary arrived promptly at noon, looking handsome in clean clothes and boots polished to a shine. He held his hat in his hands and looked almost nervous when Willow opened the door. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made Willow blush. "Thank you. You look quite handsome yourself." They walked to Harrison's office first, and Willow was thrilled to see Winston not only awake but attempting to stand, carefully keeping his weight off his injured leg, but otherwise looking much more like his usual self. His tail wagged enthusiastically when he saw her, and he even managed a small bark of greeting. "I am releasing him to your care tomorrow," Harrison announced. "The bones are setting well, and the infection has cleared up completely. He is going to need that splint for another 4 weeks at minimum, and you will have to keep him confined so he does not try to run around, but I believe he will make a full recovery." Willow hugged Winston carefully, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Thank you, Dr. Harrison. You saved his life." "You saved his life by getting him here in time," Harrison corrected gently. "I just did my job." After leaving the veterinarian's office, Zachary took Willow to a restaurant on the main street, a modest establishment with good food and reasonable prices. They ordered roast chicken with potatoes and vegetables, and as they ate, Willow found herself falling deeper under Zachary's spell. He was thoughtful and attentive, his questions showing genuine interest in her opinions and experiences. He made her laugh with stories about mishaps on the ranch, and he listened intently when she talked about her hopes for the future of the lazy sea. "My father is getting older," Willow said quietly, pushing food around her plate. "He is only 52, but the years of hard work have taken their toll. He does not say anything, but I can see he is slowing down. I worry about what will happen when he can no longer run the ranch. It should pass to me, but a woman running a ranch on her own, that is still unusual enough to raise eyebrows. I am afraid neighboring ranchers might try to force me to sell, or that I will not be able to hire the help I need because men will not want to work for a woman." Zachary reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Then you will need to make sure you are not on your own." Willow's eyes met his, and she saw the implication clearly in his gaze. It was far too soon to talk about marriage. They had only known each other a week, but the possibility hung in the air between them, unspoken but undeniable. "One step at a time," she said softly, but she did not pull her hand away. After dinner, they walked along the banks of the Concho River, the water flowing lazily in the afternoon sun. Zachary told her more about his work at the Double B, about the different personalities among the ranch hands, about Dutch masters and his gruff but fair management style. "He has been after me to think about the future," Zachary said, kicking at a pebble. "Says I have a good head on my shoulders and could be a foreman myself one day if I wanted. But I do not know if that is what I want. Working for someone else is fine for now, but eventually I would like to have something of my own. A small place maybe, nothing grand, just enough land to run some cattle and build a life." "That sounds like a good dream," Willow said. "Hard to achieve, but good. What about you? What are your dreams, Willow?" She thought about it, watching the river flow past. I want the lazy sea to thrive. I want to prove that a ranch can be successful without being huge, that quality matters more than quantity. I want to breed horses that are known throughout Texas for their strength and temperament. And I want a family again. I miss having a house full of people, having someone to talk to over breakfast, having the sense that I am not alone in the world. You are not alone, Zachary said quietly. Not anymore. They stood on the riverbank as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Zachary's arm slipped around Willow's waist, and she leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. It felt right, standing there together as if this was where they were meant to be. I have to go back to the ranch tonight, Zachary said reluctantly, but I will come back next Sunday, and I will write to you during the week if you would like that. I would like that very much. When do you plan to return home? Tomorrow, after I pick up Winston. My father is sending Tom with the wagon to collect us. I have been away long enough and the ranch needs me. Zachary turned to face her fully, both hands coming to rest on her waist. May I come visit you at the lazy sea? I have Sundays off, and I could ride out in the morning, spend the day, and ride back in the evening. I would love that. My father will want to meet you anyway, especially once I tell him. Well, tell him about us. And what will you tell him about us? Zachary asked, his lips quirking in a small smile. Willow felt bold suddenly, braver than she had ever been. I will tell him that I have met someone special. Someone who stopped to help when I needed it most, who was kind to my dog, who makes me laugh and makes me think and makes me feel like maybe I do not have to face the future alone after all. Zachary's expression softened, and he lifted one hand to cup her cheek. May I kiss you, Willow? Yes, she breathed. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but Willow did not want to. She rose on her tiptoes to meet him halfway, and when their lips touched, it was like coming home. The kiss was gentle and sweet, his lips warm and firm against hers, his hand cradling her face with such tenderness it made her heart ache. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Willow's knees felt weak. I have been wanting to do that since the moment I met you, Zachary admitted, his forehead resting against hers. I am glad you did. They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, and when Zachary finally mounted his horse to leave, Willow stood on the porch and watched until he was out of sight, her fingers pressed to her lips, a smile she could not suppress lighting up her face. The next morning, Tom arrived with the wagon as promised. He was a weathered man in his 60s who had worked for Willow's family for years, primarily helping with heavy labor during branding season and other busy times. He loaded the supplies Willow had purchased into the wagon bed, then helped her lift Winston carefully onto a pile of blankets arranged to cushion him during the journey home. The ride back to the lazy sea took most of the day, but it was infinitely more comfortable than Willow's desperate walk a week earlier. Tom asked about Winston's recovery, and Willow filled him in on the details, though she found herself being more circumspect about Zachary. That was a conversation she needed to have with her father first. Raymond Crane was waiting on the porch when the wagon rolled up to the ranch house. He was a tall, lean man with gray, streaked brown hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades under the Texas sun. Relief flooded his features when he saw Willow, and he hurried down the steps to help her from the wagon. "Thank God you are home safe," he said, pulling her into a tight hug. "I have been worried sick, even with your telegrams." "I am fine, Papa, and Winston is going to be all right too, see?" They carefully transferred the dog into the house, setting him up in a corner of the kitchen where he could be warm and monitored. Winston seemed content to be home, settling onto his blankets with a satisfied sigh. After Tom left and Willow had unpacked the supplies, She and her father sat down to a late dinner of stew and cornbread. "All right, tell me everything," Raymond said. "Your telegrams were sparse on details." Willow recounted the full story, from finding Winston injured to carrying him for miles to meeting Zachary. She watched her father's expression shift from concern to admiration, to something more complicated when she reached the part about Zachary. "This cowboy," Raymond said carefully. "He helped you out of the kindness of his heart." "Yes, Papa. He asked for nothing in return. He even offered to help pay for Winston's treatment if I could not cover it myself." "And you have been spending time with him since?" Willow took a deep breath. "Yes. He has asked to court me and I have said yes. He wants to visit here on Sundays with your permission." Raymond was quiet for a long moment, studying his daughter's face. "You care for him already. I can see it in your eyes." "I do," Willow admitted. "I know it is fast, but Papa, he is different. He is kind and strong, and he understands ranch life. He does not look at me like I am strange for wanting to work the land instead of living in town. He sees me for who I am, and he seems to like what he sees." "What do you know about him? About his family, his background?" "He grew up in Missouri, worked on his family's farm until his parents died. He has been at the Double B for 3 years, and the foreman there speaks highly of him." Willow leaned forward. "I know what you are thinking, that it is too soon to trust him, that I need to be careful. And I am being careful, Papa. But I also know that opportunities like this do not come along often. He is a good man. I feel it in my bones." Raymond sighed, but a small smile tugged at his lips. "You are your mother's daughter, no doubt about that. She made up her mind about me within a week of meeting me, and nothing her parents said could change it. I suppose I have to trust that you inherited her good judgment along with her stubbornness. So he can visit." "Yes, he can visit. But I will want to meet him properly, take his measure myself. Any man who wants to court my daughter needs to understand what he is getting into. This ranch is not just your home, Willow, it is your legacy. Anyone who wants to be part of your life needs to respect that." "He does, Papa. I promise he understands." The week passed in a blur of work and anticipation. Willow threw herself into ranch chores, checking on the cattle, mending fences, helping her father with paperwork. Winston recuperated slowly but steadily, and by week's end, he was able to hobble around the kitchen on 3 legs, keeping his injured leg carefully elevated. Willow changed his bandages daily, checking for any signs of infection, but the wound was healing cleanly. On Wednesday, a letter arrived from Zachary. Willow took it to her room to read in private, her heart pounding as she unfolded the pages. "Dear Willow, I hope this letter finds you well and that Winston continues to improve. The work here at the Double B has been relentless this week, and I am writing this by lantern light in the bunkhouse after everyone else has gone to sleep. I wanted to have a few moments of quiet to think about you without the constant noise and distractions of ranch life. I cannot stop thinking about our time in San Angelo. I replay every conversation in my mind, remember the way you looked standing by the river with the sunset lighting up your face. I have never felt this way about anyone before, and I will be honest, it scares me a little. But it also feels right, like I have been waiting my whole life to meet you. I am counting the days until Sunday. I want to see you again, to hear your voice, to learn more about who you are and what you dream about. I want to meet your father and prove to him that my intentions are honorable, that I am serious about courting you properly. Dutch has been teasing me mercilessly this week. He says I have been walking around with a foolish grin on my face, and I suppose he is right. But I do not care. For the first time in 3 years, I have something to look forward to beyond the next day's work. Take care of yourself, Willow. Give Winston a pat from me. Yours, Zachary Irving. Willow read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in the drawer of her bedside table. She took out paper and pen and composed her own response, trying to put into words the tumult of feelings swirling inside her. She wrote about the ranch, about Winston's recovery, about her own anticipation for Sunday. She tried to be honest without being too forward, to let Zachary know she felt the same way without seeming improper. Sunday morning dawned clear and cool, and Willow was up before sunrise, too excited to sleep. She fed the chickens, checked on the horses, and helped her father with the morning chores, all while keeping one eye on the road. Zachary had said he would arrive mid-morning, and as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Willow found herself watching the horizon constantly. Finally, she saw a rider approaching, and her heart leaped. Zachary sat tall in the saddle, his hat tilted to shade his face from the sun. He rode through the gate and up to the house, dismounting with the easy grace of someone who had spent his life on horseback. "Good morning," he said, his eyes finding Willow immediately. The smile that spread across his face made her feel warm all over. "Good morning. You are right on time. I left before dawn, did not want to waste a moment of the day." He held out a small bouquet of wildflowers, slightly wilted from the ride but still beautiful. "I picked these along the way. I know they are not much, but I wanted to bring you something." Willow took the flowers, touched by the gesture. "They are perfect, thank you." Raymond emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He approached with the measuring gaze of a father evaluating a potential suitor. Zachary straightened, meeting the older man's eyes directly. "Mr. Crane, I am Zachary Irving. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to visit your home and to meet you properly." Raymond shook the offered hand, his grip firm. "So you are the cowboy who helped my daughter. I owe you a debt of gratitude for that." "No debt necessary, sir. I am just glad I was in the right place at the right time." "Willow tells me you work at the Double B." "Yes, sir. I have been there 3 years now. I am a ranch hand, though Dutch Masters has mentioned the possibility of a foreman position in the future." "And what are your intentions toward my daughter?" The direct question did not seem to faze Zachary. "I would like to court her properly, with your permission. I believe she is a remarkable woman, and I want the chance to know her better. As for the future, well, it is too soon to speak of specifics, but I can tell you that I am not a man who plays games or trifles with people's feelings. If I am courting someone, it is because I am seriously considering a future with them." Raymond studied him for a long moment, and Willow held her breath. Finally, her father nodded. "All right, you may court her, but I expect you to treat her with respect and honor. She has had enough disappointment in her life. I will not stand by and watch her hurt again. You have my word, sir." The tension broken, Raymond's expression softened slightly. "Have you had breakfast?" "I had some jerky and hardtack on the road, but I would not turn down a hot meal if one is on offer." They went inside, and Willow quickly put together a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits, while the two men made small talk about cattle prices and weather patterns. She noticed how Zachary greeted Winston, kneeling beside the dog and checking his injured leg with careful hands, speaking to him in that same gentle tone that had so impressed her in San Angelo. Raymond noticed too, and she saw approval flicker in her father's eyes. After breakfast, Willow showed Zachary around the ranch. They walked the property line, and she pointed out the various pastures, the water sources, the challenges they faced with erosion and predators. Zachary listened intently, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood the complexities of ranch management. "Your father has built something impressive here," Zachary said as they stood on a rise overlooking the main pasture where cattle grazed peacefully. "It is not huge, but it is solid. Good water, decent grazing, close enough to San Angelo to make getting supplies manageable. He chose his land well. He did, though there were years when I am not sure how we made it through. After my mother died and then my brother, it was just the two of us trying to do the work of 4 people. We managed, but barely. And now we are stable. Not wealthy, but we make enough to live on and put a little aside for hard times. The horse breeding helps. We have developed a reputation for quality, and we can command good prices. That steadier income has made all the difference. They walked back to the house in companionable silence, and Willow realized how comfortable she felt with Zachary, how natural it seemed to have him here on her land. It was as if he belonged, as if he had always been meant to be part of this place. Raymond invited Zachary to stay for lunch, and the afternoon passed in easy conversation. Willow found herself watching the interaction between the 2 men, relieved and pleased to see that they seemed to genuinely like each other. Her father's initial wariness had faded, replaced by the kind of cautious respect one rancher extends to another who knows his business. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Zachary reluctantly prepared to leave. "I have to be back at the Double B before dark," he said, "but I wish I could stay longer." "Will you come back next Sunday?" Willow asked, walking with him to where his horse was tied. "If you will have me. And perhaps I could write to you during the week. I enjoyed your letter very much." "I would like that. And yes, please come back next Sunday. I missed you this week, more than I expected to." Zachary's expression softened, and he glanced back toward the house where Raymond stood on the porch watching them. "Your father is right there, or I would kiss you goodbye." "Then I will look forward to next week all the more," Willow said, though her cheeks flushed at his words. "As will I." He mounted his horse, then looked down at her with such warmth in his eyes that Willow felt her breath catch. "Take care, Willow, and know that I will be thinking about you every day until I see you again." He rode away, and Willow stood watching until he disappeared from sight, one hand raised in farewell. When she turned back to the house, she found her father standing on the porch with his arms crossed, but he was smiling. "He is a good man," Raymond said simply. "I approve." The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. Zachary visited every Sunday, arriving mid-morning and staying as late as he dared before having to ride back to the Double B. During the week, letters flew back and forth between them, getting longer and more personal as they learned more about each other. Willow treasured those letters, reading them over and over until she had them practically memorized. With each visit, Zachary became more integrated into the fabric of life at the lazy sea. He helped with chores without being asked, whether it was mending a fence, working with the horses, or simply keeping Raymond company while Willow prepared meals. Winston recovered fully, the splint eventually coming off to reveal a leg that, while slightly scarred, functioned perfectly well. The dog seemed to remember that Zachary had helped save him, greeting the cowboy with enthusiasm every time he arrived. As autumn deepened into early winter, Willow found herself falling more and more deeply in love. It was not just Zachary's kindness or his good looks or the way he made her laugh, though all of those things mattered. It was the way he treated her as an equal, respecting her opinions and her knowledge of ranching. It was the way he talked about the future as if she would naturally be part of it. It was the little things, the way he remembered details from their conversations, the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, the gentle way he touched her hand or brushed hair from her face. One Sunday in late November, as they walked along the creek that marked the southern boundary of the Lazy Sea property, Zachary stopped suddenly and turned to face her. "Willow, I need to tell you something." The serious tone in his voice made her heart skip. "What is it?" "I have been thinking about my future, about what I want from life, And every time I try to picture it, you are there. Not just as someone I court on Sundays, but as my wife, my partner in every sense of the word." He took both her hands in his. "I know we have only known each other 3 months, and maybe that is too soon to be talking like this, but I am not a man who has ever been good at playing games or hiding what I feel. I love you, Willow. I am in love with you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice in letting me court you." Willow felt tears spring to her eyes. "I love you too, Zachary. I think I have loved you since that first day when you stopped to help a stranger and her injured dog. You could have ridden past, but you did not. You saw someone in trouble and you helped, and then you stayed, and you kept being kind and good and everything I did not even know I was looking for." Zachary pulled her close, and Willow went willingly into his arms. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other beside the creek as the winter wind whispered through the bare branches of the cottonwood trees. "I want to ask you to marry me," Zachary said quietly, "but I need to do things properly first. I need to talk to your father, make sure he is amenable to the match. And I need to figure out our living situation. I cannot ask you to leave the lazy sea. This ranch is your life, your legacy. But I also cannot stay at the Double B indefinitely if I have a wife. I need to find a way to make this work." "We will figure it out together," Willow said firmly. "That is what partners do. Then let me talk to your father today. If he agrees, then I would like to ask you properly with a ring and everything done right." They walked back to the ranch house hand in hand, and Willow's heart was so full she thought it might burst. Raymond was in the barn, and Zachary went to find him while Willow waited in the house, pacing nervously. She knew her father liked Zachary, but marriage was a different matter entirely. It meant Zachary would become part of the family, would have a say in ranch decisions, would be linked to them permanently. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 20 minutes, the two men emerged from the barn. Raymond's expression was neutral, giving nothing away, but Zachary looked pleased. They came into the house, and Raymond gestured for Willow to sit down at the kitchen table. "Zachary has asked for permission to marry you," Raymond said without preamble. "He has also proposed a solution to the problem of where you would live and how he would support you." Willow looked between the two men. "What solution?" Zachary leaned forward, his eyes bright with excitement. "I have been saving my wages for 3 years. I have nearly $500 put aside. Your father says he has been thinking about expanding the horse breeding operation, but he needs help. Needs someone who can dedicate time to training and caring for the horses while he focuses on the cattle. He has offered to make me a partner in the ranch, not an equal partner, but enough of a stake that I would have a real say in decisions and a share of the profits. In return, I would bring my savings to invest in the expansion, and I would work full-time here at the Lazy Sea." "You would leave the Double B?" Willow asked, trying to process this. "I already talked to Dutch about it last week, before I came up with this specific plan," Zachary admitted. "I told him I was serious about you and that I needed to figure out my future. He said he understood, that a man has to follow his heart. And my heart has been here with you for months now." Raymond cleared his throat. "I have been needing help for a while now, Willow, you know that. We have been barely keeping up with the work. Having Zachary here full-time would make a real difference. And his idea about expanding the horse operation, it is solid. We could double our breeding stock, maybe hire a couple of hands to help with the cattle during busy seasons. It would mean the Lazy Sea could not only survive, but actually grow." Willow looked at her father, seeing the hope in his eyes, then at Zachary, seeing the love and determination in his expression. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked Zachary. "You would be giving up your independence, tying yourself to this ranch and to our future." "I am sure," Zachary said without hesitation. "I told you months ago that I wanted something of my own, a place to build a life. This is it, Willow. This ranch, this family, this is what I want." "Then yes," Willow said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I want this too." Zachary stood and came around the table, pulling Willow to her feet. "I do not have a ring yet, but I will get one as soon as I can. In the meantime, Willow Crane, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and building a future together?" "Yes," Willow said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, right there in front of her father, and Willow did not care about propriety or what was proper. She kissed him back with all the love and joy bursting inside her, and when they finally broke apart, Raymond was smiling. "Welcome to the family, son," her father said, extending his hand. "I think you are going to fit in just fine." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Zachary gave notice at the Double B, working through the month to help them transition to a new hand. Dutch Masters threw him a farewell party at the bunkhouse, and several of the ranch hands made the journey to the Lazy Sea on a Sunday to meet Willow and give their congratulations. Zachary moved his few possessions to the Lazy Sea and took over the small room that had been Willow's brother's before he died. It felt right, having that room occupied again, bringing life back to a space that had been shuttered for too long. They set a wedding date for January 15, 1884, giving them enough time to prepare but not so long that they had to wait endlessly. Willow sewed a new dress for the occasion, a beautiful ivory creation with lace at the collar and cuffs. Zachary bought a ring from a jeweler in San Angelo, a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the light and sparkled like Willow's eyes when he slipped it onto her finger. The wedding was a small affair, held at the church in San Angelo with just a handful of guests. Raymond walked Willow down the aisle, his face reflecting both joy at her happiness and sorrow that his wife was not there to see this day. Zachary stood at the altar looking nervous and excited, and when Willow took her place beside him, he squeezed her hand so tightly she nearly laughed. The minister, a kindly man named Reverend Thomas, led them through their vows. Willow spoke hers clearly, her voice steady as she promised to love and honor Zachary for the rest of her life. Zachary's voice cracked with emotion when he made his promises, but his eyes never left hers, and Willow could feel the sincerity of every word. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas declared. "You may kiss your bride." Zachary did, and the small gathering erupted in applause. Willow felt like she was floating as they walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, ready to begin their life as a true partnership. The reception was held at Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house, the kind landlady having offered her dining room for the celebration. There was food and drink, laughter and dancing, and Willow felt happier than she had in years. Even Winston attended, his leg fully healed now, and he sat at Willow's feet throughout the evening as if standing guard over his beloved mistress. As night fell and the party began to wind down, Zachary and Willow said their goodbyes and rode back to the Lazy Sea. Raymond had discreetly decided to spend the night in town, giving the newlyweds privacy. They stabled the horses together, working in comfortable silence, then walked hand in hand to the house. Inside, Zachary pulled Willow close, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Hello, Mrs. Irving," he said softly. "Hello, Mr. Irving," she replied, smiling up at him. "That is going to take some getting used to. We have the rest of our lives to get used to it." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and Willow melted into his embrace. They made their way to Willow's room, which was now their room, and discovered together the intimacy and joy of married love. Zachary was gentle and patient, clearly wanting their first night together to be special, and Willow felt cherished in a way she had never experienced before. She had saved herself for marriage, and she was glad she had waited, glad that this moment was with Zachary and no one else. Life on the lazy sea settled into a new rhythm. With Zachary working full-time on the ranch, the workload became manageable in a way it had not been for years. They expanded the horse breeding operation as planned, purchasing 3 new mares and a quality stallion. Zachary proved to have a gift for training horses, his patient and steady demeanor perfect for working with young animals. Within 6 months, they had sold 2 colts for excellent prices, and word began to spread about the quality of lazy sea horses. Raymond seemed to grow younger having Zachary around. The older man had been carrying the weight of the ranch alone for too long, and having a partner to share the decisions, and the work made an enormous difference. Father and son-in-law developed an easy relationship built on mutual respect and shared goals. They argued occasionally about ranch strategy, but it was always productive, both men willing to listen to the other's perspective. Willow thrived in her new life. Having Zachary as both partner and husband fulfilled her in ways she had not even known were possible. They worked side by side during the day, managing cattle and horses, mending fences and buildings, handling the 1,000 tasks that running a ranch required. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over the Texas prairie, talking about their days and making plans for the future. At night, they shared a bed and a life, the physical intimacy between them growing deeper and more satisfying as they learned each other's bodies and preferences. In May of 1884, Willow realized she was pregnant. She had missed her monthly bleeding twice and had been feeling queasy in the mornings, but she had not wanted to say anything until she was sure. When she finally told Zachary, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He let out a whoop of joy that startled the chickens in the yard, then picked her up and spun her around before remembering himself and setting her down carefully. "Are you sure?" he asked, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Really sure? As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor." "All the signs are there. We are having a baby." Wonder filled his voice and tears glistened in his eyes. "Willow, we are going to be parents. We are." She was crying too, happy tears that she did not bother to wipe away. "Are you ready for this?" "I have been ready since the day I met you," Zachary said, pulling her close. "Every day since then has been preparing for this, for building a life where we can raise children and give them the kind of home and love they deserve." Raymond was equally thrilled at the news, immediately beginning to plan where they would put a nursery and talking about teaching his grandchild to ride as soon as they were old enough to sit a horse. Willow and Zachary laughed at his enthusiasm but were touched by it as well. This baby would help heal the wounds left by the loss of Willow's mother and brother, bringing new life and hope to the lazy sea. The pregnancy progressed well, though Willow found the Texas summer heat particularly oppressive as her belly swelled. Zachary became even more protective, insisting she rest more and take on only the lightest chores. Willow argued at first, not wanting to be treated like she was fragile, but eventually she accepted that he was acting out of love and concern. Besides, as she grew larger, she found she did appreciate not having to wrangle cattle or lift heavy loads. In late January of 1885, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Willow went into labor. They had planned for her to give birth at the ranch with the help of a midwife from San Angelo, a capable woman named Sarah Grant, who had delivered half the babies in Tom Green County. Sarah arrived just as the contractions were becoming intense, and she immediately took charge, shooing both Zachary and Raymond out of the bedroom. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 18 hours. Zachary paced the kitchen floor, jumping at every sound from the bedroom. Raymond tried to distract him with conversation and eventually with whiskey, but nothing really helped. The sun rose and set, and still the labor continued. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, they heard a new sound, the wail of a newborn baby. Sarah emerged a few minutes later, looking tired but satisfied. "You have a son," she announced, "and your wife came through it like a champion. She is exhausted but healthy." Zachary did not wait to hear more. He rushed into the bedroom, finding Willow propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat but her face glowing with joy. In her arms was a tiny bundle, wrapped in a soft blanket. Zachary approached slowly, as if afraid he might break the spell, and looked down at his son for the first time. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a dusting of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air. As Zachary watched, the infant opened his eyes, revealing deep blue that would probably change color in the coming weeks. The baby's gaze seemed to focus on Zachary, and the cowboy felt his heart crack wide open with a love so fierce it took his breath away. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered. "Willow, he is absolutely perfect." "Would you like to hold him?" Willow asked, smiling at her husband's awed expression. Zachary carefully took the baby, cradling him against his chest. The infant settled immediately, as if recognizing his father's touch. "Hello, little one," Zachary murmured. "Welcome to the world. You are going to love it here, I promise." "What should we name him?" Willow asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at their son, Zachary said, "What about James? It was my father's name and I would like to honor him." "James Irving," Willow said, trying it out. "I like it." "James Raymond Irving, with Raymond as his middle name for my father." "Perfect." Zachary carefully returned the baby to Willow's arms, then leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Thank you for this gift. Thank you for him, for you, for the life we have built together. I love you more than words can express." "I love you too," Willow said, tears streaming down her face. "And I thank you, Zachary. If you had not stopped that day on the road, if you had not helped me save Winston, none of this would exist. This family, this happiness, it all started because you chose to be kind to a stranger." The years that followed were filled with both challenges and joys. The ranch continued to grow and prosper, becoming known throughout the region for the quality of its horses. James grew into a sturdy, curious child who followed his father everywhere, and showed early signs of having Zachary's way with animals. Winston lived to the impressive age of 14, passing peacefully in his sleep with his head resting on Willow's foot, as if he wanted to be touching her one last time. In 1887, Willow gave birth to a daughter they named Clara Marie, a beautiful baby with Willow's dark eyes and Zachary's hazel-flecked irises that seemed to shift in the light. Clara was followed 2 years later by another son, Thomas Raymond, named for both Willow's late brother and her father. Raymond Crane lived to see all 3 grandchildren, passing away peacefully in 1891 at the age of 61, content in the knowledge that the lazy sea would continue long after he was gone. Zachary proved to be everything Willow had believed he would be and more. He was a loving husband, an attentive father, and a skilled ranch manager who helped build the lazy sea into one of the most successful small operations in the region. He never took his family for granted, always making time to tell Willow he loved her, to play with the children, to appreciate the life they had built together. Willow flourished as a wife and mother while still maintaining her role in running the ranch. She taught her children about the land, about hard work and integrity, about treating animals with kindness and people with respect. She passed on the lessons her own parents had taught her, adapting them for a new generation while staying true to the core values that had sustained the Crane family through difficult times. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zachary surprised Willow with a gift. He led her out to the barn where a beautiful paint mare stood in one of the stalls, clearly pregnant and close to foaling. "I bought her from a rancher up north," Zachary explained. "She is due in about a month, and the sire was one of the best cutting horses in Texas. The foal will be special, I can feel it. And I want her to be yours, to start your own breeding line within the ranch. You have worked just as hard as I have to build this place up, and I want you to have something that is entirely your own creation." Willow was speechless, touched beyond words by the thoughtfulness of the gift. She threw her arms around Zachary's neck, kissing him soundly. "Thank you," she managed when she could speak again. "This is wonderful." The mare, whom Willow named Sage for her gray-green coloring, did indeed produce a remarkable foal. A paint colt with intelligent eyes and excellent conformation. Willow raised and trained him herself, and he became the foundation of a line of paint horses that would make the Lazy C famous throughout Texas in the coming decades. As they stood watching Sage and her colt in the pasture one afternoon, James playing nearby while Clara napped in the house and baby Thomas nursed at Willow's breast, Zachary pulled his wife close with his free arm. "You ever think about that day?" he asked. "The day we met?" "All the time," Willow admitted. "If Winston had not been bitten, if I had not decided to carry him to town myself, if you had taken a different road or ridden past without stopping, our entire lives would be different. It is strange how one moment, one choice can change everything." "I do not think it was chance," Zachary said thoughtfully. "I think we were meant to find each other. The universe just needed to arrange the circumstances to make it happen. Winston getting hurt was terrible, but it brought us together. And everything good in my life now stems from that moment, when I saw you kneeling in the road with your dog in your arms. The cowboy who met me halfway and carried my heart home," Willow said softly, remembering how she had thought of Zachary in exactly those terms during those early days of their courtship. "Is that what I did?" Zachary asked, smiling. "Yes. I was carrying Winston, trying to save him, and you took half that burden. But you also took my heart, Zachary. You carried it safely and treated it with such care that I knew I could trust you with it forever. And you have never let me down, not once in all these years." "I never will," Zachary promised. "That is a vow I intend to keep for the rest of my life." They stood together watching their horses and their land, their son playing at their feet and their youngest child content in his mother's arms, and Willow thought about how far they had come. From that desperate day when she had been alone and afraid, not knowing if she could save Winston, to this moment of perfect peace and contentment, surrounded by family and security and love. Winston's injury had seemed like a tragedy at the time, but it had led her to Zachary. And Zachary had led her to this life, this family, this happiness she had not even known to hope for. She thought about the miles she had walked carrying her injured dog, driven by love and determination, refusing to give up even when her body screamed in protest. She thought about Zachary riding toward her, appearing like an answer to prayers she had not even consciously spoken. He had met her halfway, not just on that dusty road, but in every aspect of their life together. They shared the work, the decisions, the joys and sorrows. They met each other as equals, respecting each other's strengths and supporting each other's weaknesses. That was what made their marriage work, what made it more than just a legal arrangement but a true partnership. James ran up to them, his face flushed with excitement. "Papa, Mama, look what I found." He held out a bird's nest that must have fallen from one of the trees, perfectly formed and delicate. "That is beautiful, son," Zachary said, kneeling down to examine it with James. The bird who made this was very skilled. Can we keep it? James asked hopefully. Of course. We can put it on the shelf in the parlor where everyone can admire it. As Zachary and James headed toward the house, still discussing the nest, Willow followed more slowly, Thomas heavy in her arms but content. She looked around at the ranch, at the house her father had built and that she and Zachary had improved and expanded, at the pastures where their cattle and horses grazed, at the big sky overhead that seemed to go on forever. This was home. This was family. This was the life she had fought for, worked for, dreamed of. And it was better than anything she could have imagined on that terrible morning when Winston had been bitten, and she had begun the long walk to town, not knowing that her future husband was riding toward her, ready to help carry her burdens and share her life. That evening, after the children were in bed and the ranch had settled into quiet, Willow and Zachary sat on the porch as they did most nights, watching the stars come out. Zachary had his arm around Willow's shoulders, and she leaned into him, breathing in the familiar scent of him mixed with the smells of the ranch. Hay and horses, dust and leather, the faint sweetness of the wildflowers that grew along the creek. "Tell me about tomorrow," Zachary said, a game they often played, planning the next day together. "Tomorrow, I need to check on Sage and her colt, make sure they are both still healthy. James wants to help with the chickens, so I will let him gather eggs. Clara is old enough now to start learning about the garden, so I thought I would take her with me when I weed and water. And Thomas, well, he mostly just needs to be fed and loved." Sounds like a full day. I am working with that 3-year-old gelding, trying to get him ready to sell. Your father always said timing the market was crucial, and if I can have him fully trained by fall, we can get top dollar. You are doing an excellent job with him. He has come so far. I learned from the best. Zachary kissed the top of her head. Your father taught me most of what I know about training horses. I still miss him, you know. Not a day goes by that I do not think about something he said or remember his laugh. He loved you like a son, Willow said. I think he was proud of what we built together, how we took his dream and made it even bigger and stronger. I hope so. I hope he knew how grateful I was for the chance he gave me, trusting a stranger with his daughter and his ranch. He knew. He told me once, maybe a year before he died, that you were the best thing that ever happened to this family. He said you brought life back to the ranch, made it feel like a real home again instead of just a place to work. Zachary was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. That means more to me than I can say. They sat in comfortable silence, and Willow thought about all the evenings they had spent like this, all the conversations and shared dreams, all the quiet moments of simply being together. This was what she had wanted, what she had hoped for even when she had not quite been able to articulate it, a partner who would be present, who would share her life in all its mundane and extraordinary moments. "Willow," Zachary said after a while, "yes, I want you to know something. If I could go back and live my life over, I would not change a single thing. Every hardship, every loss, every struggle was worth it because it led me to you. To this. To our family and this life we have built. You are my home, Willow Irving. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." Willow turned to look at him, seeing the sincerity shining in his eyes even in the dim light from the lantern hanging by the door. "And you are mine, Zachary. You met me halfway that day on the road, but you have been carrying my heart ever since. And you have kept it safe, protected it, cherished it. I love you more today than I did the day we married, and I will love you even more tomorrow. That is my promise to you." He kissed her then, a sweet, lingering kiss that spoke of love and commitment and all the years they still had ahead of them. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "Come on," Zachary said, standing and offering her his hand. "Let's go to bed. Tomorrow is another day, another chance to build our life together." Willow took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They went inside together, checking on the children one last time before retiring to their own room. As Willow lay in bed later, Zachary's arm around her and his breath steady with sleep, she thought about how blessed she was. She had started with so little, just a father and a dog and a determination to save what she loved. And from that, she had built everything. A husband who adored her, children who filled her days with joy and purpose, a ranch that thrived under their care, a future that stretched out before them bright with promise. She carried her injured dog 10 miles, driven by love and loyalty. The cowboy met her halfway, driven by kindness and compassion. And he carried her heart home, where it had remained safe and cherished ever since. That was the story of their love, and it was better than any fairy tale because it was real, built on hard work and mutual respect, and a commitment to face whatever came together. The years continued to roll by, bringing with them the inevitable changes that life always brings. James grew into a young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's head for business, eventually taking over more and more of the ranch operations as Zachary and Willow grew older. Clara married a neighboring rancher's son, a good man who treated her well, and they built their own spread just a few miles from the lazy sea. Thomas showed an early aptitude for veterinary medicine, inspired by stories of Dr. Harrison saving Winston all those years ago, and went east to study, before returning to San Angelo to open his own practice. Willow and Zachary became grandparents, then great-grandparents, watching their family tree grow and flourish. They never forgot the story of how they met, and they told it often to their children and grandchildren, making sure each generation understood that love often comes when you least expect it, that kindness matters, that choosing to help someone in need can change the course of your entire life. In their later years, when their children had taken over most of the ranch work and Willow and Zachary spent their days in quieter pursuits, they would still sit on the porch every evening, watching the sunset and talking about their day. Their hands, now spotted with age and marked by decades of hard work, would be clasped together, as much a part of each other as their own heartbeats. "You remember?" Willow would ask sometimes, and Zachary always knew what she meant. "Every detail," he would reply. "The way you looked kneeling in that road, the determination in your eyes, the way you held Winston so carefully even though you were exhausted. I fell in love with you in that moment, I think, though I did not realize it yet." "And I with you," Willow would say. "When you stopped to help, when you could have just ridden past. When you treated my dog with such gentleness, when you offered help without asking anything in return. That was when my heart knew, even if my mind took a bit longer to catch up." They would sit and remember, and the memories were sweet, made sweeter by all the years of happiness that had followed. They had built a good life together, a life of purpose and meaning and love. They had raised children who were kind and strong, who carried forward the values they had been taught. They had created something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. When Zachary finally passed away in his sleep at the age of 78, Willow grieved deeply, but without bitterness. They had been given 53 years together, more than many couples could hope for, and those years had been full and rich. She missed him terribly, missed his presence beside her on the porch, missed the way he would still look at her with love in his eyes even when they were both old and gray. But she did not feel alone. Zachary's legacy surrounded her in the thriving ranch, in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, in every fence post and pasture and horse that bore the stamp of his careful stewardship. He had carried her heart home all those years ago. And even though he was gone, her heart remained safe and whole, sustained by the love they had shared and the family they had built. Willow lived another 5 years after Zachary's death, dying peacefully at the age of 80 with her children around her. Her last words were about Zachary, telling her family, "I will see him soon, and we will walk together again on that dusty road where we first met, and this time we will never have to part." They buried her beside Zachary on a hill overlooking the lazy sea with a simple stone that read, "Willow and Zachary Irving. Together they built a life. Together they rest." And on quiet evenings when the wind blows across the Texas prairie, some say you can still see them, two figures walking hand in hand across the land they loved, their spirits forever entwined, forever home.